All right, I'm going to call the City of Milton Virtual Joint Common Council meeting with the Milton Town Board to order at 6:03 p.m. And can I get confirmation of appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
And then, John, did you want to call the town meeting to order?
No, that'll be me.
Or Brian, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's not a fire commission meeting, so I'll call the town board to order. We do have 4 of our 5 supervisors and of town board members of in attendance. I'll call to order and confirmation of meeting notices then for the town.
The town hall, the town's website, and the historic lake house inn.
Thank you. If I might ask, we probably should ask one person to generally facilitate the meeting itself, even though it's 2 municipal simultaneous meetings. Rather than talking over each other, we oftentimes find somebody that will generally facilitate the agenda. Is there somebody interested in doing that? Anissa or the chief or even our administrative assistant?
Yeah, so how we've done it in the past, like for a public hearing for the City of Milton, I'll generally call the meeting to order and then proceed to agenda items. And then when there's an agenda item where multiple people want to talk, Inga has moderated that portion of the meeting. So otherwise, for the City of Milton, we just go down the list of names of our council members and give them an opportunity to speak on each item.
So what do you suggest? If Inga is comfortable, I'm talking about generally following the agenda. We've had moderators, different moderators in the past for different subjects in a similar meeting as this.
Inga, what do you think about it before we go on and each entity approves the agenda?
I don't care either way. I can help facilitate it, but it might make more sense to have someone from either the town of Milton or the City of Milton be the official chair for the meeting. And then if we open it up for public comments, then I can help facilitate that process.
I think that would be a good suggestion, that we maybe appoint a chair for this joint meeting for the purpose of following the agenda.
Brian, are you willing to do it?
I could. I would welcome anybody that is interested or wants to do that. But
I'm fine. It really doesn't matter to me. I think we all have the same goal, is to have an organized, structured meeting so everybody has an opportunity to be heard and to participate in a discussion if they so choose. So.
And just looking back at previous minutes from previous joint meetings, it looks like we, as the city, did a separate motion to approve the agenda, and then the town did a separate motion to approve their agenda. So it'll just be mainly facilitating that conversation, I think, is what the chair would be doing for the meeting.
yes, any action items will be 2 separate municipal actions. Yes.
Okay, well, let's at least get the agenda approved. And then Brian and Inga, if you want to work together.
Okay, we'll give that a shot.
We'll see how that goes. So is there a motion from the City Council to approve the agenda? Devin has moved to approve the agenda. Bill has seconded it. All those in favor?
Before we call for a vote,
I have a question.
I did have some input on a concern of an agenda item. Item 5 appears to be a commission item. So there may be some concern that that's necessary on this agenda.
Number 4.
I have number 5.
We have
Discussion
number
possible
4.
action regarding an increase of wage.
That's
Yeah,
4.
Number 4 on the common council agenda. I believe
I'm
it might be
sorry.
number 5 on the town board agenda. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the wage line item, there's been some concern voiced that may be an appropriate agenda item for the commission, and it wasn't part of the focus for this meeting tonight.
So would you have Devin make a motion?
Oh,
Somebody
I
has
think-
to mute themselves.
Yeah,
There
I
we-
think someone might have their computer speaker on at the same time a phone is on in the same vicinity, so it makes it go back and forth, the sound. Anyway, continue, Anissa.
Thanks. So Devin, did you want to make the motion to approve the agenda with the discussion of the wage increase off of the agenda?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
And then Bill, did you want to second that motion? Okay. Brian, is that okay with you?
I just wanted to voice what I had input on. That
Okay.
It's your agenda item at this time.
Okay, all those in favor of the proposed agenda without the wage increase discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we have an agenda and we'll let the town board.
For the town board on the agenda here tonight, any input on that?
I move to approve with the changes for the town's agenda would be item 5.
Second.
That was a motion by Beth. Is there a second?
John Jennings will second that.
All right, then for the town, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as drafted, removing item 5, the discussion of wages. Any further discussion on the motion? And all in favor of the motion for the town, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And then it appears we're moving forward then on discussion, possible action regarding the Milton Fire Department structure, intergovernment agreements, and funding, which was the primary focus of having this joint municipal meeting. Would somebody like to start the discussion on where we are? The commission wanted to bring this to the municipal level.
I can start. So the idea of this meeting was to hopefully pick to choose one of the scenarios that has been discussed at the last several commission meetings, fire commission meetings. And I have the PowerPoint slides available. If we want to pull them up, I can do that. I don't know if there's a need or a desire to. Everything that we had, that the deputy chiefs and the chief and myself have worked on over the last several months has been at the direction of the fire commission, along with the scenarios we have talked about several times and debated, went back and forth, etc. And we believe the 2 scenarios that were presented are very good plans. And so I'll leave it up to the 2 governing bodies if they wish to have anything put up on the screen for review or for discussion, etc. And I don't know if Chief Rhodes or any of the deputy chiefs want to add anything.
I think it's a helpful tool to refer to.
Okay.
Yes, most of us have seen them, but it's just a good reference.
So I don't know if there's a particular slide that, or if you want me to go through the whole presentation, similar to what we did on July 30th and similar to what I did last night at the Common Council meeting.
So David, if I can say something, this is Ernie. This is Ernie. So if I can just start by saying that, you know, this process started when we had a fire commission meeting, and the commission created a subgroup made of Brian and Teresa, and we were charged with going back and working with the command staff to come up with 2 options that we felt were viable options. That in fact did. Everybody participated, either in person or on the phone, and we shared emails, the PowerPoint presentation for many opportunities to tweak this presentation. Everybody agreed to those options, and those 2 options were presented to the Fire Commission. And so we've come to a point to where, you know, the fire department is seeking guidance from the commission and from both bodies on which direction we need to go in. I want to remind everybody, this is not a crisis. There are warning signs that says that we need to make decisions for the future. We know that our paid on call model, and this is across the United States, this has no untowardness to any of our members of the fire department in any way, shape, or form, but our paid on call across the United States and in our area have decreased significantly. And we used to rely on them, you know, a lot to get out and get the call and respond to the calls. We also know our call volume has gone up to three plus calls a day. There are some days we 6 or 7 calls. And so we're at the point of staffing a fire station because of call volume and then the lack of paid on call. And then we also use paid on premise as a model to try to staff the ambulance and the pumper company, the engine company too. And there are times when that is tough to get to too. So we've come together as a group and say, what does the future look like for our citizens? And what does the fire department look like in the future? Because we know these warning signs are here. And so this is why we're here today, is to look at that. We presented the 2 models that the command staff agreed upon. We've developed pros and cons that the command staff went through and did together. And so we're looking forward to some good dialogue, and we're looking forward to a decision on which way to travel moving forward.
Dan, could you run through the whole presentation, please?
Sure. Okay. So scenario 1 is a consolidation with Janesville, in which we would have 15 full-time firefighter paramedics at a cost of about $1.3 million. And this is fully burdened wage, benefit, etc. amount. 3 full-time lieutenants. We would utilize our existing part-time battalion chiefs and our current full-time administrative assistant. We included annual contribution for capital and equipment replacement to reflect the realities of replacing things with motors in them, because they don't last forever. Currently, as everyone in the city and town are aware, we just look at capital contributions kind of on a year-by-year basis. We know there's a 5-year capital replacement plan out there, but we typically fund it on a as-needed basis, and then we're scrambling to either borrow or scrounge around in the cushions of the couch for the nickels and dimes for those pieces of equipment. And then there is a reimbursement to Janesville for utilization of their existing fire and EMS management structure. And then for simplicity's sake, at this point, we left our current operating budget of supplies, medical supplies, utilities, vehicle maintenance, fuel, etc., in the budget at $281,000, which is a total budget of about $2.4 million, with a required tax levy of just over $2.1 million. And obviously, if the commission chose, or if the 2 bodies here decide to go with this model, we would have to talk with Janesville to fully vet all this stuff out to make sure that it makes sense for all parties. But we believe it is very close to what the financial realities are. Are there any questions on that one before we move on to the standalone? Okay. Then the standalone uses many of the same assumptions. 15 full-time firefighter paramedics, 3 captains, 3 lieutenants, 1.5 FTEs for admin assistant, fire chief and deputy chief. We're still including that annual contribution for capital and equipment replacement. And then we've once again flatlined the operating supplies, vehicle maintenance, etc. And then we have plugged in an estimated number for accounting, payroll, and HR services. So that is a budget of just over 2.7 million with a levy of just under 2.5 million. The way allocations are currently done, it's a 50-50 split between the city and towns of Milton with contracted townships. The 2020 budget needed about $907,000 from the city and town and the other contracted townships in order to balance the budget. And this is the breakdown of how that happened. And then the commission also staffed us with trying to determine what would a reasonable methodology be for cost sharing a significant increase in service provision, with the basic understanding that the existing way the contracts are handled with the 4 townships is probably not the most equitable method. And so we looked at equalized value, and we looked at that because the state of Wisconsin utilizes that for allocating property taxes to school districts, counties, and tech schools. And for a majority of the areas that have fire districts, that is the basic methodology for cost sharing. And the amounts are updated every August. And it is also a fairly good representation of the value of property that's being protected by the fire department. So we looked retrospectively to say if that methodology had been used in the 2020 budget, how would that breakdown have looked? You can see the city of Milton would have contributed about 37% of the budget, 31% for the town of Milton, 20% for Harmony, etc. This is just a pie chart illustrating those same percentages. And then this is the over-under of what each municipality would have contributed under that allocation methodology. So you can see the city of Milton, quote unquote, over-contributed by about 51,000, and the town of Milton over-contributed by 110,000, and then the 4 contracted townships would have under-contributed based on what happened and the methodology. So then we looked at if scenario 1 was chosen, what would that look like in terms of potential increases to each of the jurisdictions? You can see the increases are quite significant. But when you look at how the 2020 was allocated, or the shortfalls, these numbers shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And then scenario 2 under a standalone, because that overall budget is higher than the consolidation method, the percentages are higher. So then that brings us to how could the townships and the city of Milton get this additional funding? For those townships that have a population of less than 3,000 people, the levy increase can be approved at an annual town meeting or special town meeting per Wisconsin statutes. And then here is the timeline for referendum for those municipalities greater than 3,000. And that's basically the end of the presentation. And then tonight we're just looking for a scenario so we can further vet it. And then whatever scenario might be chosen, we would begin the process of hiring folks or merging command staff. Would be the first couple steps. That's the end of the presentation. I know that was the fairly quick version. But if people have questions and want me to pull up particular slides, I'd be happy to do that. And I don't know if Chief Rhodes wants to add anything to that presentation or not.
No, sir. Just looking forward to the conversation.
By the way, my audio on my laptop, so I had to call in. I don't know if it's not.
We can't hear you, Brian.
Breaking up, Brian.
Hey, Brian, mute your computer audio and then unmute your phone.
Brian, another thing, if you're having connectivity issues, shut your video off too. That takes up a lot of bandwidth.
Okay, is that any better?
Yep.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this happened the last two meetings. My audio crashed on my laptop. I still have video. Anyway, so I think where we're at here tonight is seeing if the municipalities can come to some conclusion potentially on one of the two scenarios, one or two, or agree that neither scenario is the final solution yet. And I think part of that dialogue includes probably some significant decision on funding, maybe working towards committing to possibly referendum and timing of that. So I think it's two things, trying to find a way to make a commitment to a long-term model and then some sort of commitment to funding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is Anissa. I think that makes sense. And we should just ask different members, I guess, of the city council or the town board, or do you want folks that are not elected officials to have opportunity to share their thoughts within a certain amount of time or a speaking limit?
Well, I certainly would agree that allowing as much input as possible so that we don't at the same time go on indefinitely. Yeah, for sure. I would also curious if there happens to be any representative of other contract towns. Is there anybody logged in here from other towns? I don't hear anybody.
If you're trying to speak and we're not hearing you, it's probably because you're muted. So you're going to have to unmute yourself. Okay. I don't see anyone at this point.
I would say also
No.
for the city of Milton, when we have public input, we have folks give us their first and last name and their address for our records.
Yes. Yeah, we would certainly want to identify anybody that wants to offer input. I hear nobody outside of council members or town board members. Well, for now then, is there somebody who wants to move forward with the dialogue on a long-term plan? Is there a great support for a particular scenario or concerns you'd like to raise on either of the two scenarios pointed out? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I guess I have had some concerns over time because when we have had difficulty with regard to lack of staffing in responding to fires or other emergencies, we've run short of staffing on a consistent basis. And it has been difficult to ensure that we have had appropriate staffing because we've been relying on volunteers in addition to people that are being paid to be there, particularly on the weekends, so that we have consistency. And so that is part of the reason that we are looking at a different model at this time. We cannot continue to rely on the inconsistency as our numbers in fires and emergencies continue to rise. And we've even heard complaints and concerns from the bodies that we're working with, the firemen and the EMTs, that we need more to work with. So it's difficult to answer those questions and not be able to have everything to do that with. And this seems like a reasonable scenario one seems like a reasonable way to answer your concerns. I'd like to hear other people's feelings about that as well.
I'll make a comment. Going into this thing, there are two concerns in my mind. One is paramount, and that's safety. We want safety for our properties. We want safety for our persons in terms of emergency services. And there have been steps taken over the last couple of years to try to improve that situation in terms of particular in the area of the EMT service. What we started to hear on a routine basis was concerns about the long-term viability of what we've got. Mixed into this whole discussion has been the issue of the fire station, which we all know has been something that people have been talking about for years and years and years as a need. It became clear as we started to listen to the presentations and to take a look at some very good data in terms of call data, that we have an issue that is kind of systemic. It's not going to take care of itself on its own. It's going to take some sort of intervention. Secondly, the whole issue of the fire station really is secondary, not that it's unimportant, but secondary to figuring out what the governance structure is going to be. Because there are going to be impacts on what's built in particular, depending on the governance structure that is chosen. Some of them are, very, very simple kinds of things. If it's a standalone department, we need a fire chief's office. I mean, that's, not to make light of it, but there are differences in the building. And there are differences in the building with the two models. Consolidation with Janesville probably has a different equipment mix, or potentially a different equipment mix. Consequently, we need to deal with the governance structure, and we need to deal with the governance structure in a way that is viable for the long term. The work that has been done by the the chiefs, by Chief Rhodes, by Dan, the direction of the Fire Commission, has been, I think, an honest attempt to take a look at what would the costs be to implement something that has been talked about before, instead of some of the studies that have been done as far as a full-time professional department. By saying full-time professional department, I don't mean to demean the professionalism of those people who are not full-time firefighters. We've had great coverage, and last night at the council meeting, I tried to echo the sentiment that we're not in an unsafe situation. What we find ourselves at is one where I think the chief said, Chief Rhodes said it well. We're seeing those indicators. We're seeing signs that things will devolve there. Consequently, in my mind, we're looking at safety first, and then the second consideration has to be cost. It has to be what value is being provided for the dollars that taxpayers are paying. At this point, I must say that I'm inclined towards the consolidation model, and I think both models do provide the safety factor that we're looking at. To this point, I really haven't heard compelling arguments that say that the standalone department has some added value that would cover the cost differential between those two models. So I think both models would deliver the safety that we're looking for. And if that in fact is the case, and I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but if in fact the models are similar or equal in terms of their safety value, then the question comes down to dollars and cents. We have one model that is, at this point, considerably cheaper. Sorry for the length.
This is Larry Lane, and the only thing I would add to that, I tend to agree with Bill Wilson, and but the only thing I would add is I think scenario one provides another valuable tool for our department personnel, and that is shared training opportunities, shared equipment opportunities. Generally, I think when you can share costs, shared service type systems, generally provide more opportunity to save funds, but also to enhance those sort of activities. Ongoing training that could be possible, not paid for totally by one department, sharing experiences with each other. That's a valuable tool for all the personnel. So I think there's some value in scenario one there that you don't want to forget about. And purchasing equipment together will probably give us more discounts down the road. Thank you.
If I could just say a couple of things, if that's all right. First, I wanted to greatly thank all involved in putting these scenarios together. I truly appreciate all of the due diligence that has gone into this, the crunching of numbers and discussions that have gone into this. The Milton Fire and EMS Services Department has a very rich and long history and have taken great pride, and I am so very proud of our personnel within that department. And I think that that's because they've been able to do so much for so long. And I don't want to say that they've been taken for granted, but I think that in my opinion, is the most important part right now, is making sure that we have the personnel taken care of. and that we will then be able to ensure that they continue to be able to get out of the door when necessary to take care of our citizens. Because yes, at the end of the day, that's the most important part. But honestly, they've been doing it, and we're ever so grateful for all that they are continue to do. I think as we look to whichever scenario, if either, it's important for us to think about what this is going to look like long term, not just in the immediate, next 5 years. I think we all can agree that we're going to have a new structure in terms of a building. That's a given, and that's not even part of this discussion tonight. In terms of the personnel, whatever we decide, we have to look to the 2-year time frame that this is going to take. And I wish we could have crafted, so I'm going to put this in before I forget, I wish we could have crafted our agenda tonight to include a recombining of our fire commission so that we could have this discussion of the pay. This is a very important issue that needs to be taken care of sooner than later. And so at the end of this, I would like us to please, as a fire commission, set our next time for meeting, because tonight is it. This can't wait, in my opinion, until the end of next month for us to have a conversation about. So getting to the scenarios, I'm just going to throw a couple of thoughts out there, and it's really just a conversation to get us started. When I refer to the history of our fire department, we have a pride, and I do not in any way, shape, or form mean to suggest that we would lose that pride by a shared services or a consolidation with Janesville, but I'm wondering what that will look like for us. We will lose our voice. We will no longer have a vote. And to me, I'm concerned, because that then, it's the identity of the Milton Fire Department, Milton, Town of Milton Fire Department. I'm sorry, it's like 18 words long to get our name out there. I don't want us to lose that identity. So it's just a conversation. It's not me coming out saying, absolutely, I'm against this because I don't want to lose our identity. And so again, that's taking care of our department members. I guess in terms of even scenario 2, I realize that there's a cost difference, but I'm wondering how we will be able to combine our part-time people to be able to ensure those jobs. I think it's necessary for us to have the conversation and just to see if there's a potential for maybe a tweaking of either scenario and to what we might be able to arrive at. So maybe it's not exactly scenario 1 or exactly scenario 2. But at the end of this, I think that we're all in agreement that we have to be able to take care of our personnel and ultimately our citizens. So I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
I just, excuse me, I just wanted to say that, everyone has really made some really good points so far, and I'm not going to go and repeat everything the points that you all have made. But I will say this. I realize, and we all do as elected officials, that, there's sometimes traditions and things that have to be moved around or maybe changed a little bit for the sake of the good of all. This is a really tough decision, tougher for me than I thought it was going to be, because I have been working with this department for as long as I have. And so we're talking about friends, we're talking about family, we're talking about neighbors. So it's a really tough decision, but our job is, as elected officials, is to look out for the safety of our citizens and our community. That's why they put us here. And as Bill said, safety has to be a priority for our personnel as well as our community. I am concerned about going to a standalone station again, just because I feel like we have, throughout the years, done so many things to bring people into our department that I don't know what more we do to attract people. And I feel like the people that work for us deserve to have a good workplace, and they deserve to have benefits. They deserve to have a pay that is something that you can support a family on, you know, and actually we have not done that. We have not done that. It has been several years since fire departments across the country have made very severe changes in their departments in order to accommodate not only the firefighters and the paramedics and the EMS people themselves, but also the community, because every community is struggling. It's not just us. And I truly feel like we have made an incredible effort in involving our people, these wonderful people, and working with them and trying to figure out how to solve this. But in the long run, we have to be thinking forward, and we have to be thinking of 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. I mean, right now, we are so late in even thinking of women being on the fire department. That's not right. And so I guess I think that we need to get some definite answers as far as a second step if we choose to go with Janesville. I'm very confident that they would be willing to sit down with us, and things like keep our Milton name to our station, or specific personnel, as we have already talked about. I think that we need to give that a chance. I don't think that right away we should all just be jumping on, well, okay, it's all gone and we're just totally out of it, because I think we all know pretty much as elected officials that that's not how it works. You know, you always go back and look at what somebody else did and what is going on after you have made a decision. I mean, I think it's a standard. At any rate, that's all that I have to say about it. But I do really want to reiterate that this is a very difficult decision because of the history of this station, and they have every right to be proud. They certainly do.
Before you go on to the next person, Beth, back to something you had said. I had been kind of looking around at some of the statutes, and I may have misread it, but I do think that there's something in there about when you start to join other municipalities, and there's more than just two, about creating the board, and that it needs to be more equally represented. And like I said, I may have misunderstood it, but yeah, I'd like to have not just me, but perhaps our lawyer look into that more clearly, because I agree with you. We do need representation, but that would be great to try to have more equalized representation. So.
I agree, Teresa. That would be fabulous if we could direct Brooke to do that. I know that in terms of the representation, that would be a huge help. And then, I'm sorry, there was another part to that I was going to mention, but I'll think of it later. So I'm sorry. Let's go on to the next person.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't want to lose that. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do remember it. Sorry to jump in. I think that when we're looking at what our costs are, this is not a given. And so we would then, if we did not have that representation, be somewhat at the mercy of, much like for instance, Harmony, that could be experiencing a 500% increase because of their equalized value. I mean, when we're talking our municipalities and what we're able to shoulder, I can guarantee you that I don't think either municipality could shoulder an increase and we wouldn't have any options at that point. So that's just another little nibble for food for thought.
Now we do have our the Fire Commission's attorney with us too. Brooke Jones has joined us tonight. So if you have any specific questions relating to the options that we're discussing that have some sort of legality matter, I'm sure she could say a few things on those issues too. So Teresa, did you have any specific questions you wanted to ask Brooke tonight?
I just want to interrupt for a second, and maybe Brooke can chime in on this. It is my understanding that this isn't a Fire Commission meeting though, and that she does not represent the city of Milton or the town of Milton, and that so how does that work?
Right, we would contact her at another time, but she, yeah. So that was I didn't realize she was here, so.
And if I shouldn't be here, that's fine, but I have thoughts on what everyone is discussing, and maybe the next time that the fire board meets, we can discuss those, because essentially everything is contractual, and you can contract however both parties or all three parties or all four parties decide. So I'm ready to discuss that when anyone needs me to. But if I shouldn't be here, then that's fine too.
I'll say that I'm glad that Brooke is here. This is a very valuable opportunity for her to see this discussion and input. It makes discussion with her now or later much more informed. So I'm glad she's in on this conversation and can participate or at least listen to make future conversations more intelligent.
Yeah, I think there are, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'm still willing to answer questions, but I'll mute myself now.
I'm glad you're here too. And we've not even met before. Now I've forgotten my train of thought, so go ahead.
I guess I should clarify or attempt to point out that scenario 1 and scenario 2 data isn't the solve all the full context of a complete plan. It's a great beginning, and there's been a lot of information and stuff put together for the primary focus so far. In, for example, scenario 1 is a staffing model, and management models are suggested. It doesn't fully address, and I don't think we anticipated that would address capital, shared expenses, or ownership when it comes to the final word on ownership of equipment or ownership of brick and mortar yet at this point. I think the focus so far has been on a staffing model that could potentially work, and figure out contractual ways to handle that at a future date. So I don't know if I've muddied that up at all or not, but the option 1 scenario lays a very good plan out to complete putting ink to understanding it.
I did think of what I was going to say. What I was going to say related to kind of developing a set of principles to go along with instructions on a deeper dive into one of these things. You know, we've identified the loss of ownership and the staffing concerns that also go along with that as being important on 2 levels. The staff level, and the governance level in terms of what kind of commission or body would be providing the direction to this. I think that, should we head in that consolidated direction, there are some things that probably can be done. We don't know all of the answers right now legally. We don't know all of the answers from the standpoint of whether or not there's statutory authority to do X or Y. We don't know, frankly, all of the rights that employees might have in this kind of situation. Those are the kinds of things we need to find out. My default position would be let's explore the consolidated model, but provide what are our principles in terms of retaining some representation somehow, et cetera. So kind of a list of bullet points that aren't just the financial go over with a finer tooth comb, but some of those other principles as well.
And I would say that consolidation probably at the very least would redefine the whole role of a commission or a committee like the commission is. It would be a totally different perspective on its role, and potentially eliminate the commission altogether if there's a contractual agreement that resolves all of that in a management philosophy contractually under consolidation. So I don't think that in a consolidation that the commission can operate almost identical to what it does now. It wouldn't probably have that kind of a role anymore.
So I don't know if it makes sense, but maybe I can go through and call on some of the other town board members and council members that haven't spoken yet and just make sure that they don't have anything to add to the conversation at this point.
Please.
So Ryan, you're the first one I'm seeing that hasn't spoken yet on my screen. Do you have any comments you want to make?
I wanted to hear what more the town board had to say, to be honest.
Okay. Perfect. Next person I'm seeing is Devin. Did you want to say anything at this point?
I agree with Ryan on this side. I'm just kind of listening right now.
Okay. Yep, perfect. So we've heard from Beth. Jim Hanlon, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I'm just listening too. Listening to both sides.
Perfect. John, did you get a chance to speak yet?
Nope, I was just going to listen to the comments here, and I guess I can chip in. So we've had a very exploratory view of the two options, and I agree that consolidation in theory is the most ideal situation where we have a consolidation of resources and we have a consolidation of manpower, and that makes the most sense on a municipality standing. I do have some concerns over the representation, and that's been brought up by several commission members and council and town board members tonight. And that's definitely one of the things that makes this option difficult, and how that looks going forward is how that representation is formed. As we know, the costs that are associated with running a department are not fixed costs. They continue to change and they can rise depending on the expenses that are incurred. So in a contracted service, it's definitely a lot different than an in-house provided service as far as how those services stagnate, or I should say are more controlled than in the other option. So, I mean, ideally, a contractual service is going to provide you a relatively similar service as an in-house service. Ideally, though, it would be at a lesser cost. So, I mean, that's again why I guess the initial entry of this option is the most appealing. But it does have some drawbacks. I mean, we're talking about going into a consolidation where we have resources. We have a fully staffed fire station. We have all the equipment necessary to run as an independent station. We have the building. We have everything but the staffing model to facilitate in-house service. So what does it look like with those resources, and how does it look like in a consolidation model, how those resources are distributed. Are those resources going to be paid back to each municipality and to be sold, or are they going to be turned over and that contractual service will then begin? Those are some of the questions going through my mind that make it very difficult to stand by the first option, because those unknowns have yet to be written, and it requires each party to be interested in each party's conversations. And I hope that would be the case going forward between Janesville, Milton, and the town of Milton. But I can't guarantee that every single requirement that the commission or each municipality would like to include on these options is going to go forward in a regards that is interested by all parties. So I guess that's what I have to say at the moment.
This is Jeremy Park. Would it be okay if I said something?
Yes, please.
Just a little bit more on the conversations about professional fire department. Even up till now, the Milton Fire Department has never had the opportunity or the funding to properly staff the fire department and give the community the exact coverage that they need. I think if the fire department had that opportunity, I think they would be able to prove themselves very well. And I think they've proven themselves very, very well already, with part-time and very minimal staffing. And if any of you would like to know the opinions of the association, I think that would be, maybe that would give you some more thought on that.
So Jeremy, I think the focus of your comment was on better staffing, which I think both of these proposed scenarios address.
Yeah, you are correct. Like I said, we've never had the opportunity. Like I said, we have the equipment, we have the somewhat people. We just need the funding to run our own fire department.
If I may, Brian, to kind of tag on what Jeremy said, I believe that is a very fair statement. That kind of gives light to the opportunity to provide our own service because we have the ability. We can hire the staff and such. We're not doing this alone, though. We still are going to rely on mutual aid. We're still going to rely on services provided mutually between each municipality, between Janesville, Edgerton, Whitewater, the surrounding communities that have fire departments that can help us bolster our service. We can never have one station that can provide everything all the time. We're still going to be working with each municipality to provide that service. So just keep that in mind going forward too.
So one thing that we haven't delved into, probably mostly because we haven't moved towards a commitment, is what would Janesville perceive as a desirable model for capital expenditures? How to manage the capital equipment and property? Who would be ownership, and how would that ownership be managed? And that's going to require a direct input from the city of Janesville. That has not been explored, and I've heard some concern that we just don't know part of that portion of the model yet in consolidation.
I think a lot of what we're talking about with that, Brian, is stuff that we would need to go over with our attorney at the fire commission meeting. One thing that I was just thinking of is, there's a couple have made comments about what we would expect in an agreement with Janesville. Well, what do we expect? What do we expect? Let's talk about that. Do we want to keep our name? We have a list of staff that we have requested for them to take on. we need to have a contractual agreement with regards to equipment and or buildings. Can anybody think of anything else?
I can't, but I will add this. The fact that we've already worked with Janesville and are working with Janesville tells me that they're willing to sit down at the table and discuss anything openly and honestly. Thank you.
And I would anticipate they, yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. The current options, the consolidation option gives you 5 people at the Milton Fire Station, and that's it. The standalone gives you 8 to 9 people at the Milton Fire Station, with immediate admin, immediate chief to handle all calls, all situations. If you go with a consolidation at this time, your admin / chief positions, you're 10 to 15 minutes away. You know, you'd be slowing down, potentially slowing down, you know, admin staff for serious calls in our area, including north of our area, which would even be longer. So I'm just thinking of that for our community. You know, not me personally, but you know, there's things that are going to be delayed. Like I said, there's only 5 people if you consolidate. So just keep that, just be aware of that.
This is Chief Rhodes. If I can make a comment.
Yeah, Chief Rhodes, could you please talk?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. So I disagree with Chief Parker that you're only going to get 5 people. We're looking at a model that staffs an ambulance and an engine.
That's 5 people.
And then we're also looking at a consolidation model that would bring in multiple engine companies to assist, you know, at a moment's notice. And true, we do rely on mutual aid as a whole, but with our agreements with the towns around the city of Janesville, we don't just send a fire truck. We send a full response to an emergency depending on kind and type. And so I want everybody to realize the resources of the synergy of pulling both organizations together. And, you know, you'll have 8 people at the fire station Monday through Friday during the day because it's the chief and the deputy chief and whoever else it may be, but you're not going to have it 24/7. And so, you know, I think that once again, I'd like to just remember that when we worked on these models, all the command staff were in a process that was commissioned by the commission itself to come up with the best option for the future, and that was it. And so we all agreed on the consolidation model. And it's fairly confusing on what's going on. I agree. I think we can work out all the contractual issues. I know City Manager Freitag has directed me to, on behalf of the fire chief of Janesville, that we are happy to work with the town of Milton, the city of Milton, and to work forward on building a future together. And so I just want to clarify that, and I would love to answer more questions if I have to.
Chief, and I agree with you, but yeah, everybody relies on mutual aid, MABUS, AVL. You know, so a standalone station would have people coming as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
You're right, Chief Parker, but that's why we're in this conversation, is because the current model of the standalone station relies on paid on call and paid on premise, and it's failing. And so if you think we're going to continue with recruitment of volunteers, which we do every day on a regular basis, and I know that you all have been trying a lot for years to attract paid on call and to recruit paid on premise. And it's simply not happened. It's not happened this year. Last year, the year before, you know we can't sustain that model. And so we have to come to terms with what is the model. And we know we can't rely on that in the future. So to think that a standalone station would still maintain its ability to respond to a growing community reliant upon some paid and then paid on call and paid on premise, it's inaccurate.
I have a
Chief,
question.
I believe, yes.
The model presented for a standalone, the second option that Dan presented tonight, is that relying still on paid on call and paid on premise?
Parker, wasn't that your point?
The standalone station would be fully staffed 24/7, with the opportunity of paid on call / volunteer to come in and assist if the availability was there.
And that cost was not factored in the original. We didn't factor any part-time costs into that model. That doesn't mean we couldn't, but it wasn't costed in, so to speak.
So I'm confused.
That only makes the standalone model more expensive than it already is. It's already more expensive than the consolidation. If we're going to add additional costs to it, then it becomes even more expensive. That was never vetted. That was never talked about at the subcommittee meetings, ever.
But so I'm still confused about the standalone model because for some reason I thought the standalone, and I'm not saying one or the other, I'm just saying I thought that the standalone model was like a full-time fire staff.
You are correct.
Okay. And that's what we're talking about. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're talking about. Option one is consolidation and negotiating terms of that. And option two is a standalone model. It would be fully staffed full time, and it
Correct.
would be a feasible model to solve the issues that we're facing today and in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do people want me to put the slide up that shows what we included for staffing under the two scenarios?
Yes.
I think what Chief Parker's trying to make a point at is that we would not only have full-time people at the fire station, but if we would spend more money and allocate more funding, we could also have paid on call respond, and we could also utilize the paid on premise to I guess continue to expand our numbers.
So this is
Chief,
where I guess I want. Go ahead, Brian.
Chief, in scenario 2 here with the what's on screen here, what is the staffing model challenges in scenario 2, where it looks like it's a fully staffed scenario? What are the disadvantages physically? I know that there's a staff sharing advantage in consolidation, but as far as physical staffing at any given moment, what are the disadvantages in scenario 2?
So Brian, that's a good question, and that's one of the reasons why we as a command staff put this model forward, because this is a good model right here. If you follow this model, if you decide to remove, the three captains who are your 24/7 incident commanders, who also divide the duties between an EMS officer, training officer, fire marshal, and which allows the deputy chief to be the operations guy and to make sure that he is strategic in guiding and building policy, and the fire chief too. And then you've got your captains, and you've got your lieutenants that really are on the engine and oversee the ambulance. And so this is a good model. The downsides would be that you wouldn't take advantage of any synergy with the city of Janesville, because it brings a huge resource to the table that would be at the disposal of the citizens of the community, and it is potentially a more expensive model. And so there's no, this is still a good scenario. That's why we brought it forward to the commission in the process.
Yeah, so it does show, Chief, see, 15, 21, 22, 23 full-time people. 15 plus 3 captains, 3 lieutenants, and a chief and a deputy chief. So is that 21? Am I reading that scenario correctly? 21 full-time?
I think it'd be 22 plus the administrator.
Oh, administrative assistant, yes. And I do fully understand the point.
24 and a half. 15 plus 3 plus 3 plus 1.5 plus 2. So it'd be 24 and a half.
Okay. But I do clearly understand and comprehend the shared services advantage of being able to share man resources, for example, sick time, vacation time, whatever. I understand that part of the disadvantage. I'm just looking at the physical staffing model otherwise. So I was trying to be clear on what the points were trying to be elaborated on with staffing.
So Brian, I guess to caveat on your point, the only difference between the two models besides the management side of things is how many personnel are at the fire station on the payroll. And in this case, scenario 2 has a greater number of personnel between the administrative slots as well as the captains versus the standalone. That's pretty much the difference in the cost. Am I right into assuming that, Dan? The cost of difference is mainly those administrative positions, which otherwise would have been handled by Janesville in the consolidation model. Otherwise, they're the same cost.
And I think Chief Rhodes hit on it best. Just because there's 24 people listed, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 7 or 8 people available 24/7. This was still designed with 5 people available to respond on a moment's notice for calls, with obviously the chiefs and deputy chiefs able to respond in case of a large-scale emergency. And the deputy chiefs on this call and Chief Rhodes can correct me if I'm wrong in that assumption. But this is, in terms of response time and that sort of thing, it was designed the same as the consolidation, with the goal of having 5 people at the station available to respond 24/7, 365. That was my understanding of it anyway. Do people still want me to share the screen, or should I take it off? Because I know it probably obstructs the ability for a lot of you to see the Brady Bunch screen.
Take it down.
I can always bring it back up later.
I still would like to hear from the people who have not given us their thoughts yet. The purpose of this meeting was to introduce our full board and council to what the Fire Commission is doing here. So please speak up.
This is Ernie again. This is a difficult decision for the sake of the fire department and moving forward, I really would like to get some sort of direction tonight on what we can do moving forward. I think it's a smart idea, and I don't want to continue to hold the fire department in limbo per se on, what the future looks like. Remember, we're not in a crisis, but we need to make a decision, and especially if we want to go forth and engage Janesville, that decision needs to be made, because we will put a lot of resources on this to really drill down on this. And so I would just ask the commission ask the elected officials tonight to make a really good effort to try to make a decision this evening, or at least give direction to the fire commission. Thank you.
I think right now we don't know whether or not the Janesville consolidation scenario would be acceptable. There are costs that we don't know at this point. There are other issues that might be raised that might not be acceptable to us. But we're never going to know unless those are explored. And consequently, my inclination would be, let's take the next steps. Let's enter into a conversation with Janesville. Let's discuss some of those issues in terms of governance and local ownership and all of those kinds of things. But if we don't at least pursue that, and I think I don't think we're deciding tonight, but we're deciding to go forward with the next steps that would allow us to get to a referendum in time. I guess that is what it comes down to. That means we need to act quickly in whatever we do. My inclination would be, let's do that exploration with the Janesville model. If we find that's unacceptable, the fallback position is not exactly what we've got right now because of the cooperative arrangement we have with Janesville, but it's pretty darn close to it. We know the next one to explore. If for some reason the Janesville thing gets blown out of the water with either costs or unacceptable stipulations.
So Bill, are you suggesting that maybe we ask for more investment and time as far as focusing on defining some contractual issues? I would envision 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters to a contract. One chapter would address authority and staffing models. Another chapter might define the management authority itself, to what extent, let's say, that the Janesville Fire Chief has in carrying out all of the management of it within the parameters of agreed on budgeted terms. Another chapter might be contractually deciding who owns the equipment and how they own it and what they own. Another chapter might be brick and mortar, who owns it, who's invested in the buildings. But I think there's several components to a contract, and I see those as individual pieces of the contract that need to be figured out and need Janesville's input on what they see as desirable or undesirable.
Yeah, and another huge one is the capital costs of the new building. What does that look like? That's not really defined in this the way we've got it going. So I think we've got to have the conversation with Janesville if we're going to find those things out. And I think you're right, Brian, that we're talking about a contract that is broken down into those component parts and maybe 1 or 2 more.
So my
that the
question,
idea of a building is separate. Right now, we need to work on the rest of it.
The idea
Or the
is
size of a building.
the idea is, but you know, what is the framework for those capital costs in the consolidated model? You know, does you know? I don't want to muddy the waters with that one, but I think it's something that gets discussed as part of that same discussion with Janesville.
is this something that you want to recommend as the city and township to the fire commission for the fire commission's attorney? Or how would you like to proceed?
I would see it as more a recommendation to further explore scenario one, authorizing or suggesting, recommending, if you will, to the fire commission to further explore on scenario one and drill down to the core of these issues with them. Come back to the fire commission. That's what I would recommend.
Oh, are you saying that, so then the city of Milton would make a motion and then take a vote on that? And then we, Brian, we would have the town then see if they're going to make that same motion?
That's what I'm suggesting, yes. Madam Mayor.
Yeah, it seems as though the suggestion is to, by further explore, seems to mean ask for the contractual terms to be drafted.
Right.
So that there's a review process and we figure out that language. That's what further explore seems to mean to me, is primarily contract language.
I also think, O'Brien, if you will, this is Larry again, it also includes drilling down some more on those numbers that were presented to make sure those are fairly correct and accurate. So we have a good baseline to work from if there is a referendum.
Yes, and I think we would generally assume that we're not greatly anticipating modifying scenario one, but just moving forward with it to find language for the most part.
I guess in that view, it also kind of makes it more comparable between the models, because right now we're talking about something that we can barely picture with the consolidation, because consolidation, like I've said many times, means different things, and the way that that is orchestrated could be different per municipality or could be different for one versus two. We don't really know. So if those terms have yet to be drafted and understood, it makes it very difficult to go forward with any kind of conversation versus a standalone or consolidation approach if we really don't know what the terms look like for the consolidation. Because again, consolidation again can mean many things. So if we're looking at, because it, from my understanding, it had been, the past conversations have been an absorption or a merger where Janesville, we contract that service from Janesville, where Janesville comes in and starts to provide that service for the communities. That has been the understanding I have had from the conversations that the commission has had since the beginning of the models that were presented. So if that is not the direction that we're interested in pursuing, and we want to have a different consolidation model to understand the intentions that the municipality want to develop within each intergovernmental agreement potentially, then we need to, yes, further in depth understand those options and put it in writing in what we are expecting in municipalities this case.
Okay, so for the city of Milton, can we make a motion, council?
Actually, want to throw in one more thing first, Anita, Mayor. I just want to say that I think that we do need to make the decision today, and it seems like we are going down that path of making a decision. But I think it's one of those things where if we decide to go down the consolidated route, which is the way I kind of lean towards personally at the moment, based off what I've heard, I think there's always a chance we can step back if, again, those basically our requirements are not met. So that does give us, you know, we do have a solid second option. And I think it's definitely worth pursuing down this one path to start with, to at least know how we lie, but it's also kind of a decision that allows the chief and everybody else also to move forward. So.
Okay, thanks. Can I get a motion?
Can I jump in one? I'm sorry, Mayor.
I mean, let the city council make their motion they want to make, then they can, and you can discuss it at the town portion. But I think there's a consensus with the city of Milton, the direction they want to go. Now, if nobody makes a motion and seconds it, then I get that. But I'm going to call for a motion from the city council.
I'll move forward with building a structure that would define what we are expecting with a consolidation model, and bring that back to each of our entities to decide if we're ready to move forward with that model.
I would second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and I'm going to turn this back over to Brian and the town.
So for the town of Milton, is there an action on how you'd like to proceed? You've heard the city's wishes on moving forward. I think there's been a large consensus on trying to model that language, and I think that's what they're trying to accomplish here, so that language can be reviewed and worked on.
Brian, did Beth have something she wanted to say?
Jim?
Yeah, Brian, did Beth have something she wanted to say? I'd like to hear it.
Beth?
There were two things that I was going to say. One was that I don't think Brooke is on the call any longer, but I know that it's being recorded. At least I think it is, Inga. Yes, it says that it's recording. So I think it's really important. Teresa brought up a really good point tonight that there may be some statutes out there and what that looks like. So in whatever we're doing, we have to bring Brooke into this conversation. And then the other question I have, and it's just a point of order more than anything, is I'm just ensuring that that model is necessary for that amount of personnel. Again, I've said this, I think, every single meeting. I will never tell you how you need to run to fight fires. But at the same time, I just need to know that amount of personnel is what we absolutely need to staff the station with, or if there is a model that could be perhaps look a little different. So that's all I'm asking as we're going about this scenario and what this consolidation potentially could look like.
So is there any motion by the town board here yet?
I will go ahead and propose a motion to further investigate the options in consolidation with the opportunity to set criteria with the intention of using that criteria to compare against a standalone model and further investigate the consolidation option with Janesville.
Is there a second?
Yeah, Brian, I'll second.
Okay, a motion by John Jennings, seconded by Jim Hanlon. Any further discussion on the motion? The motion seems to be similar to the city's intentions to move forward with collecting data.
And Brian, I do have a couple discussion points, if I may.
John?
So at this point, I think that's a very fair conversation to have with Janesville and see what an agreement looks like. It's really, like I said, difficult to make a decision when the criteria have not been defined. So if we define those criteria, we'll see if it's advantageous for the municipalities, for the communities we serve, and to ensure that we're getting the best system put in place for our fire department. So that's I guess why I would like to proceed with conversations in regards to those criteria.
Any further conversation? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion for the town of Milton, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The one question I have is, this will require some direct communication while Janesville tries to draft or works with drafting some terms. What's perceived as the line of communication that's consistent with proposed scenario 1? Where would the city of Janesville expect to have some direct communication with?
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. Who is seeking that information from Janesville, and is that a fire commission decision or not? And then I think the key is once that decision's made, that the fire commission and its commission members stick to that and not go on their own and create their own scenarios and have their own conversations. Because I don't like to have phone call conversations with the city manager from Janesville saying, hey, is this really what you guys think? And then I have to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So that is critically important, to be transparent, to be respectful, and to do this in a way that has trust involved in it. Not just trying to get what you want, but trying to do it in an open and transparent way. So once the decision is made as who is going to get this information, then that's who gets it. Nobody else. Because that is critical to keeping trust and having a professional approach towards this very important decision. And if people don't agree with it, then they should explain those things in an appropriate manner at a commission meeting. Those are my thoughts as somebody who really strives to be transparent and professional in what we do, because this is too important to have it wrapped up in emotion and coffee table talk and having people go and do their own thing. So that would be my only comment, is whatever you decide, you have to stick to that. It can't be something else.
I think that as far as having a representative, I believe that it would be to everybody's interest for Brian and Anissa to be those representatives.
That would be fine. The only alternative I was going to offer was that it would come back through the subcommittee to the fire commission and then brought back to the separate municipality. I'm just offering an alternative to Linda's. Either way sounds good to me. I'm just proposing that we have a clear line of demarcation and communication.
So the subcommittee is Teresa and I, and in either case, I'm one of those two, but I would agree that Anissa and I, but I think I envision to a great extent, Chief Rhodes is going to probably be the pivot of conversation. He's the chief, for one thing. He's the focus of all of this. He understands these models as they've been drafted. So I think the city and chief is an employee of the city. There's no doubt the chief is going to be directly involved with some conversation and trying to attempt to put language together. I would tend to think that the city might rely on a lot of his input, and would surprise me none at all that the city might contact somebody like Anissa or myself. I just wanted to be clear what those channels might look like or should look like.
Brian, it's Ernie. That makes sense. I would also like to include City Manager Freitag into this conversation. I think he would have to speak on behalf of the city, and also would have to, work with yourself and the mayor in moving forward and exploring on what's going on. If that's okay with the group.
Oh yeah, that's key. I mean, actually that's the point. City management is who we're asking to come to some conclusion on what they think that the contract should look like, or what the city's willing for it to look like.
I would just state that I think that this is a municipality level, so city and town level, as opposed to a fire commission level. Fire commission level is there for a certain purpose, but it is the municipalities and our elected officials on the town board and on the city council that would be parties to whatever comes up, and consequently I'm very comfortable Brian and Anissa, or I think it should be balanced, somebody from the town, somebody from the city. If Anissa should choose Teresa, for example, to represent her, that's fine too. But as Al said, it should be someone designated up front, and we should stick with the same horses throughout.
We need a motion for that because of the way that we have this listed on our agenda.
I think it would be probably wise to make that clear.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion from the city council.
I'll make the motion to approve Anissa as the city representative with conversations with Mr. Freitag and Chief Rhodes and the township with regards to a agreement for the fire department.
And that
would second.
And there's a second by Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and I'll send it back to the town.
So for the town of Milton, motion that clones those wishes would be in order.
I move to appoint Brian as the town point of contact for negotiations going forward.
Second.
And to clarify, there's a motion and second. Beth, was that you that seconded?
It was.
This is specifically for a drafting model of scenario one.
Correct.
That's the focus of this communication and work would be focused on scenario one draft language. So it won't go on some other tangent. Okay. Motion's on the floor. All for the town in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I want to elaborate on, if I were to be directly contacted, by the way, by Mark Freitag, on trying to understand what's trying to be accomplished on maybe one specific point in a draft. If I wasn't able to make a direct interpretation from scenario one as I understand it, I might actually ask Chief Rhodes or Nisa or Dan for a specific answer to one question. So I may ask for resources if I'm contacted.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think the key is to have open communication. So if I have a question, a specific question, I might send it in an email and then copy everybody on it. So we all understand the questions being asked. So I'm not asking a question and then I get an answer, and then 3 days later somebody else is asking the same question when we've already had the answer. So I guess the key is just to have open communication, so we're sharing information and we're effective and efficient.
Because this is going to be sensitive for somebody like maybe Mark Freitag, who hasn't been in every conversation, to try to put together the common goals that we've discussed, as well as represent what he sees as primary goals of the city of Janesville. So this is going to be a challenge, might be a strong word, but he's going to find a very creative, artistic point to, coming to some sort of conclusion on a draft. This will not be easy for him, I don't believe.
Well, I think if we go have the right intentions of really gathering information, there's been a lot of conversation about it's difficult to compare scenario 1 and scenario 2 with some of the blanks not being filled in scenario 1. So I think if we all go in with the goal of gathering information and a positive attitude, and keeping in mind the highest and best interest of everyone, I think it'll, you know, might be challenging at points, but I think we also have to go in with appropriate intentions too. And I think we all have the appropriate intentions. I think the city of Milton, the town of Milton, all the fire staff, we all want what's best. And I appreciate the conversation tonight. I appreciate the respectful tone and the engagement. And, you know, I'm glad that we're able to make some progress moving forward.
And when I say that I think this would be difficult for somebody like Mark Freitag, what I really mean by that is because I believe he's going to attempt to be sensitive, that he'll have to weigh that concern with any draft he is involved in.
So is there any, have we covered the agenda?
I believe we have, unless, at least with item 4 for now, we've accomplished a lot there, I think. I don't want to discount that with some other tangent, but if we're done with, I'm sorry, for the town, it's item 4, the discussion and possible action on this structure. If there's any, I don't know what the city's agenda looks like. Is there public participation or general items on your agenda?
Yeah, there is. We kind of already covered public participation.
We've asked for public participation already. I don't know that we've really led to any other general items that are necessary as a result of what we've talked about already tonight.
Chair Meyer.
Yes, Beth.
This is Beth. I'm just trying to chime in and just asking if there's anything that we can do. I know that we're separate municipalities coming together for this meeting, but do we have to wait until the next Fire Commission meeting to have this discussion, or can we choose a different date for the Fire Commission meeting? I feel that this is necessary, the topic of the pay. This is a necessary discussion sooner than later.
So the Fire Commission isn't meeting tonight, so I guess if the Fire Commission wants to choose a sooner date to meet, that would be a topic that would have to go through the Fire Commission and not our respective city and town municipalities.
I can say though that if John, as the chair of the Fire Commission, decided that a special meeting was needed and sought a date to have that I would have no objection.
Okay, so that's not necessarily on our agenda, so I just want to be mindful of what we have on our posted agenda. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but.
No, agreed. That's exactly why I was bringing it up, Anissa, that I wanted to at least see if there was any indication as to how we can arrive at this, and maybe you just state it publicly that it's something that I'm thinking of, so that everyone is aware that I'm interested in meeting sooner than later. So I don't know how we can achieve that goal, but I'm requesting that we meet sooner, please.
You could send out some potential dates to us and we'll deal with it online.
Yep, I can send out some dates, preliminary dates of when potentially we could set up a meeting.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other general items by anybody, or are we ready for adjournment? Or
I'll take a motion to adjourn from the City Council. Bill raised his hand to motion to adjourn. Linda raised her hand to second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the Milton City Council is adjourned.
For the town board, are you?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second, Brian.
Motion by John Jennings, seconded by Jim Hanlon to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Oh, thank you, everybody. This was a good meeting. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.